My name is Nicole. I'm 33 years old. And when I turned 18, I died for my family. I disappeared as if I had never existed. That was the day I learned the truth. Everything I had saved for college and every babysitting shift, every weekend job, every birthday check had been emptied out by my own parents. All of it gone, spent on my younger brother. I remember standing in our kitchen, my acceptance letter to the University of Massachusetts Amherst in my hands, my heart hammering, expecting congratulations. Instead, my mother's face was tight, my father's eyes cold. "Sweetheart," she said, almost gently, "we had to help Tyler. Boston College is expensive. He needs a real chance." Boston College, twice the cost of my school, a chance bought with my future. "That was my college money," I whispered. "You're practical," Dad said. "You'll figure it out. Community college, maybe. You're tough." Practical, tough, disposable. That's what I was to them. Tyler came in then, grinning like a prize winner. "Thanks, sis," he said, as if it were a joke. "I'll make it worth it." I stood there, my hands trembling, my dreams reduced to someone else's deposit slip. And in that moment, I knew. The girl they had raised, the one who sacrificed, who believed she mattered, she was gone. That night, I packed a bag and left. I walked out of that house carrying only my clothes, a scholarship that barely covered books, and a kind of fury that burned hotter than hunger. 10 years later, I came back. Not as the invisible girl they'd erased, but as Professor Reed, teaching at the very university they said I'd never reach. Meanwhile, the brother they chose, he's nowhere. Before I tell you what happened when our paths crossed again, let me ask you, what would you do if your parents stole your future and called it family? Would you accept it? Or build a life they could never touch? When I was a kid, money had a sound. It was the jingle of coins dropped into the glass jar my mom kept on top of the fridge. She called it Nicole's College Fund. At first, it was a joke. Neighbors would hand me a $5 bill after I babysat, and Mom would say, "Don't spend it all at the mall, put it in the jar." I thought of it like a game. $1 for mowing Mrs. Feldman's lawn, $2 for watching the Jacobs twins, $5 for sorting clothes at the consignment shop. Drop, clink, save. The jar became ritual. Every time I slid a bill in, I imagined the future it was buying. Books, a dorm room, the life my parents told me I deserved if I worked hard enough. But even then, there were cracks. Tyler, 2 years younger, loud, restless, never had to drop coins into a jar. If he wanted new sneakers, Dad bought them. If he wanted guitar lessons, Mom rearranged the budget. When he begged for a gaming console, Christmas delivered. "Boys need hobbies," my father would say. "He's got potential." And me? I was the practical one. The one who would make do. The one who could wait. At 10, I learned to stretch babysitting money to buy my own school supplies. At 12, I packed lunches for myself so Mom could focus on Tyler's soccer schedule. At 14, when Dad's car broke down, I lent them half my jar because family helps family. "You'll get it back," Dad promised, sliding the coins into his palm. I believed him. By high school, I was working nearly every afternoon. After the final bell, I clocked in at the grocery store 2 blocks away, bagging groceries until dark. Saturdays meant a diner shift from 7 a.m. until noon, pouring coffee for truckers and retirees who tipped in crumpled ones. I studied at night, exhaustion buzzing like a second heartbeat, but I told myself it was worth it. Every pay stub meant another line in my future. Teachers noticed. Mrs. Callahan, my English teacher, handed me back an essay with red ink scrawled across the top. "You think like a teacher." I'd smiled at that, folded the paper carefully and tucked it into the jar for safekeeping, proof that my dream was real. At home, though, praise was rare. Mom fussed over Tyler's grades, signing him up for tutoring and summer programs. Dad drove him to baseball tournaments across the state. When I came home exhausted from double shifts, they barely looked up. "Don't overdo it, Nicole," Mom said once, folding laundry. "But it's good you're busy. You're so practical." Practical? That word became a cage. When Tyler got into trouble skipping classes, sneaking out, Mom and Dad defended him. "He's just figuring himself out." When I brought home straight A's, the response was muted. "That's expected from you?" I remember one winter when the heating bill soared. Mom pulled me aside, voice hushed. "Sweetheart, could you cover the utilities this month? Just until Dad's bonus comes." I paid it without question. The next week, Tyler got a brand new snowboard. It wasn't that they didn't love me, at least that's what I told myself. It was that their love was tangled up in utility. I was the reliable one, the one who could be counted on, the one who didn't need the applause. By 17, the jar was gone, converted into a custodial bank account under my name. Every deposit slip bore my signature. It felt official, permanent, safe. I carried the account balance like armor, proof that I had earned my place in the world. Sometimes late at night, I'd sit at my desk, acceptance brochures spread in front of me, and imagine the life waiting for me at UMass Amherst. The red brick buildings, the library towers, the hum of a campus where students argued about philosophy and wrote poems in the margins of notebooks. I could almost feel the crisp Massachusetts air on my skin. I wanted that life so badly, it burned. And in those years, Tyler drifted further. His grades slipped. He changed hobbies like socks. One month, he was going to be a musician, the next a YouTuber, the next a future entrepreneur. My parents poured money into every whim. "He's still finding his path," Dad would say, pride undercutting the excuse. Meanwhile, I cleaned classrooms at dawn, folded diner aprons at night, saved every dollar I could find. I was the safety net for all of us, though no one said it aloud. Looking back, I think that was when I started to vanish in their eyes, not all at once, but piece by piece. They stopped seeing me as a daughter with dreams and started seeing me as a function. The caretaker, the provider, the one who had it covered. I died at 18, but the truth is, they'd been erasing me long before. And still, I clung to hope. Hope that when I finally held that acceptance letter in my hands, it would all change. That they would see me. That the sacrifices, the long nights, the aching feet, the fading childhood, all of it would be worth it. Instead, they looked at me with those cold eyes and told me my future was already spent. And in that moment, I realized the jar on the fridge had never been mine. It was always theirs. The night I left home, the air was sharp with late spring chill. My duffel bag was heavy with clothes, notebooks, and the acceptance letter I couldn't bear to throw away. My parents didn't stop me. Tyler didn't look up from his new laptop. The door shut behind me with the quiet finality of a lock clicking into place. I didn't have a plan. At first, I stayed on the couch of my friend Hannah, who lived with 2 roommates in a cramped apartment near downtown. Her mom gave me a blanket and said I could stay a few nights. Those nights stretched into weeks. I tried to be invisible, washing dishes, folding laundry, leaving before sunrise so I wouldn't feel like a burden. During the day, I worked shifts at the grocery store. At night, I studied financial aid forms, writing essays that blurred together. Describe your hardships. Describe your goals. Describe why you deserve a chance. It felt humiliating, packaging my life as a story worth investing in. But I kept typing. When the letter came from UMass Amherst confirming my scholarship, it wasn't enough to cover everything, but it was enough to prove I hadn't lost. I took the cheapest dorm option, cinder block walls, a twin bed, one drawer missing a handle. I bought textbooks used, underlined with strangers' neon highlighters. I learned to survive on granola bars and instant coffee. Some nights hunger gnawed until I thought my stomach would cave in, but every morning I woke up still burning. College wasn't a dream for me. It was a war. Most of my classmates arrived in SUVs packed with bedding, mini fridges, and parents who cried as they hugged them goodbye. I arrived alone carrying a thrift store suitcase and an overdraft fee. I worked 2 jobs, Cafeteria cashier in the mornings, library aide at night. On weekends, I took whatever shifts I could find, waitressing, handing out flyers, cleaning offices. My hands were always dry from bleach, my feet blistered from hours standing. But in class, I came alive. I sat in the front row scribbling notes like my life depended on it, because it did. When professors asked questions, I answered. When group projects fell apart, I picked up the pieces. I wasn't the smartest in the room, but I was the hungriest. And hunger, I learned, counts. Still, there were nights when exhaustion pinned me to my mattress, and I stared at the ceiling, convinced I wouldn't make it. That's when doubt whispered, maybe your parents were right. Maybe practicality means knowing when to stop dreaming. But then I'd remembered Tyler's grin, the way he said, "Thanks, sis," like my sacrifice was his entitlement. That memory was jet fuel. Sophomore year, I met Dr. Martinez. She taught Intro to Literature and had a habit of scribbling cryptic comments in the margins of our essays. On mine, she underlined a paragraph and wrote, "You don't just answer questions, Nicole. You ask the kind that make others think. That's what real teachers do." The words lodged under my skin. No one in my family had ever suggested I was more than useful. But here was a stranger, an authority, telling me I had a voice worth following. I started visiting her office hours, half for advice, half because her cramped office with posters of Baldwin and Morrison felt like a sanctuary. She taught me how to apply for research assistantships, how to network with faculty, how to believe in a future larger than survival. "You're not just getting through college, Nicole," she told me once, tapping her pen against my essay. "You're building one." That idea terrified me and thrilled me. Meanwhile, my parents called less and less. At first, Mom would leave voicemails. "Hope you're eating. Tyler's classes are so demanding. We're proud of both of you." But when I didn't call back, the messages stopped. On holidays, I stayed on campus, working shifts while the dorms emptied out. Instagram showed me Tyler's life, ski trips, fraternity parties, vacations. My parents in the background, smiling, their arms wrapped around him. I wasn't in the picture. The silence hurt, but it also hardened me. I realized I didn't need their validation. I didn't need their money. I didn't need their permission. What I needed was my own future, and I was carving it out with every paper graded, every paycheck cashed. Junior year nearly broke me. My roommate dropped out mid-semester, and I couldn't afford the rent difference. I picked up an overnight shift cleaning classrooms, stumbling into lectures half asleep, surviving on caffeine and willpower. One night, after scrubbing graffiti off a bathroom stall, I sat on the cold tile floor and cried so hard I thought my ribs would crack. I hated them for choosing him, for abandoning me, for making me feel disposable. But even in that lowest moment, I didn't quit. I taped my acceptance letter from UMass above my desk, yellowed and wrinkled, a reminder that no one could take it away again. By senior year, I wasn't just surviving, I was shaping something. I presented at a student conference, my first time speaking into a microphone before strangers. My voice trembled, but my words held. When the applause came, small but real, I felt a shift. I wasn't just a student anymore. I was a teacher in the making. When graduation arrived, I didn't expect my family. They didn't come, but Hannah did. Dr. Martinez did. 2 professors I'd worked under showed up with flowers. As I walked across the stage, diploma in hand, the crowd blurred, but my vision was clear. I wasn't anyone's provider anymore. I was my own person, and this piece of paper was proof. Graduate school was harder, new city, new expenses, no safety net. But I had built calluses. I knew how to fight, how to scrape, how to claw forward. I landed a teaching assistantship that barely covered rent, but it gave me a classroom of my own. The first time I wrote my name on the board, Ms. Reed, I almost cried. It wasn't glamorous. My apartment leaked, my shoes wore thin, my meals were cheap. But I had carved out independence from the ashes of my old life. And with every lecture, every student who stayed after class to ask questions, I felt myself stepping into a role bigger than the pain that had shaped me. Looking back, those years were brutal. They were lonely, they were hungry, but they were also the furnace that forged me. While my parents poured everything into Tyler, I built myself from scratch. While he stumbled from one failed major to another, I found my purpose. While they erased me from their lives, I carved my name into the world. By the time I turned 28, I wasn't just a student anymore. I was Dr. Nicole Reed, lecturer, researcher, professor in training. And though my family hadn't seen me in a decade, I knew the day would come when they would. And when it did, I wouldn't be the daughter they thought they buried at 18. I would be the woman they couldn't ignore. By the time I turned 33, the campus of UMass Amherst felt more like home than any house I'd ever lived in. My name was on an office door now, Dr. Nicole Reed, lecturer. I had students who came to me for guidance, colleagues who respected me, and a life I had built brick by brick, lecture by lecture, shift by shift. I didn't expect to see my family again. Not really. 15 years had passed since that night I walked out at 18. 15 years of silence, broken only by the occasional awkward holiday card or half-hearted voicemail I never returned. And then one Tuesday morning, they were waiting in my office. I had left the door unlocked while I ran to refill my coffee. When I came back, the sight stopped me cold. My mother perched on the chair across from my desk, her perfume too sweet, her hands folded like she was at church. My father standing stiff in the corner, arms crossed as if bracing for impact. And between them, Tyler, 31 now, older but not grown. His shoulders slumped, his hair thinning, eyes darting around the room like a boy caught in a lie. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating. My heart thudded. The mug in my hand trembled, and I set it down before I spilled. "Nicole," Mom said, rising as if we were close. "Honey?" Honey? The word felt foreign, sour. Dad gave a short nod. "You've done well for yourself." It sounded less like praise than a grudging admission. I stepped inside, closed the door, and leaned against it. I didn't sit. "What are you doing here?" Tyler shifted in his chair, trying to smile. "Hey, sis." The sound of it made my skin prickle. I hadn't heard him call me that since the day he thanked me for giving up my college fund. "We wouldn't be here if it weren't important," Mom said quickly, her eyes wet but practiced. She reached out as if to touch my hand across the desk, but the space between us stretched like a canyon. "Important for who?" I asked. "For Tyler," she whispered. Of course. Always for Tyler. They launched into it the way people rehearse a speech in the car before arriving. Tyler had struggled. College hadn't worked out. He'd tried sales, real estate, crypto, nothing stuck. He'd been laid off again, bills piling up, credit cards maxed. But he still had potential, Mom insisted. He just needed one more chance. "An MBA here," Dad said, gesturing to the campus map pinned on my wall. UMass is respected. If you could speak to admissions, maybe write a recommendation, it would mean the world. My laugh startled even me. Sharp, humorless. "You want me to help him get into my university? After what you did?" "Don't be petty," Dad snapped. "This is family." Family. The word rang hollow. I looked at Tyler, his eyes wouldn't meet mine. "You had everything," I said, voice steady but low. "All the money I saved, all the chances. You wasted them." He flushed. "It wasn't like that. Things just didn't work out." "They worked out exactly how you let them," I shot back. Mom's voice wavered. "Nicole, please, we made mistakes. But you don't know what it's like watching your brother struggle every day? We can't turn our backs on him." I felt the old anger rising. The memory of my acceptance letter crumpling in my hand, the jar on the fridge, the years of being told I was practical while they poured everything into him. I had turned my back on him once, and it had saved me. I walked around the desk standing tall, so they had to look up at me. "Let me be clear," I said. "I will not write him a recommendation. I will not call admissions. I will not put my name on a lie." Mom's face crumpled. "Nicole, we're still your parents. We raised you. Doesn't that mean anything?" "You raised me to be invisible," I said, heat rising in my chest. You raised me to provide, to sacrifice, to disappear. And when I fought my way back, you didn't even notice. Now you come here to my office after 15 years, not to apologize, not to see me, but to beg for him. That's not family, that's using me all over again. Tyler stood suddenly, his voice loud. You think you're better than us? You think being a professor makes you some kind of hero? I stared at him. No. I think working for everything I have makes me stronger than you'll ever be. Silence thickened. Even Dad had no retort. Mom finally broke it. So that's it? You're just going to let your brother fail? I met her eyes. I didn't let him fail. You did. Every time you chose him over me, every time you covered for him, every time you handed him my future on a silver platter. You built this, not me. Her lips trembled. Dad's jaw clenched. Tyler shoved his hands in his pockets, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. I think we're done here, I said, opening the office door. For a moment, none of them moved. Then Dad marched out first, stiff with indignation. Mom followed, pausing at the threshold. You'll regret this, Nicole, she whispered, her voice breaking. I already regretted you once, I said. Never again. Tyler lingered last, his eyes glassy. For a flicker, I thought he might apologize. Instead, he muttered, You always wanted me to fail. I shook my head. No, Tyler, I wanted me to succeed. You were just too busy wasting everything to notice. He left. The door clicked shut. I stood alone in the silence of my office, my pulse hammering, my throat tight. On my desk, a stack of essays waited to be graded, the names of my students scribbled in the corner. They trusted me to see them, to guide them, to notice their potential. I thought about the girl I had been at 18, the one who died in that kitchen when her parents stole her future. If she could see me now, she wouldn't recognize me, but she would be proud. For the first time in 15 years, I felt free. Free of their approval. Free of their demands. Free of being the invisible one. I wasn't their provider anymore. I wasn't their scapegoat. I was Dr. Nicole Reed, and I was done saving people who refused to save themselves. You think they stopped there? That they accepted my refusal and my boundaries? No. Their revenge had only just begun. They didn't shout in my office. They didn't beg or storm. They went where vengeance could be tidy and quiet. Behind my back, to the dean's office. They went to the people who shape reputations, to the place where a whisper can become a decision. I didn't find out from them. At 10:28 a.m., a terse email from the department secretary landed in my inbox. Dr. Reed, the dean's office reports a visit from your relatives, parents and Tyler Reed, regarding admissions matters related to applicant Tyler Reed. No actions have been taken. This is your notification. The message was polite and clinical, the kind of message that reports weather, not violence. But my hands went numb. The coffee mug trembled in my grip, and I set it down like I was laying something fragile to rest. For a second, I was 18 again, the kitchen light glaring, my acceptance letter crumpling at my feet. For a second, I felt that old, familiar wash, the cold falling away of the ground beneath me. Then a different feeling rose, hot and clear. Rage not for humiliation, but for intrusion. They had come into my life, into my professional life, to smear it. They had tried to make my private family grievance into a public institutional problem. I did not march to the dean. I did not clutch at explanations or beg for mercy. 10 years of hard labor had taught me something simple and brutal. Fires fed by drama burn hotter. They need oxygen. I would give them none. Silence, paperwork, policy. That is how you kill a rumor. That is how you win without screaming. I opened the folder I'd labeled months ago, the one I kept for later. Inside were the old screenshots, the bank notice, the airport photos, and the newer one, the secretary's email. I added them, dated and time-stamped. I wrote myself a note. Document everything, facts, not feelings. Facts survive where fury fades. Then I did 3 things. 1. Paperwork, not performance. I prepared an email to the university's compliance channel, the official line where complaints become records. No melodrama, just the skeleton of events with references to policy. Conflict of interest, non-interference, and the prohibition on family members influencing admissions or professional evaluations. I quoted the rule numbers. I attached the evidence. The tone was impassive, the kind that makes a bureaucrat nod, stamp, and file. Not because I loved procedure, but because procedure builds walls that people with petty motives cannot climb. 2. A boundary with a stamp on it. I drafted a formal letter to my parents. 3 sentences. Precise. Delivered by certified mail because sometimes paper must carry weight. As of today, do not contact me at my workplace. All communications regarding Tyler or other family matters must be in writing and sent to my personal email. Any attempts to influence academic decisions or to contact university officials on my behalf will be documented. N. Reed. I attached the printed university policy on faculty conflicts of interest. No accusations, just limits. A legal rope thrown across the canyon they had dug. 3. Turn their move into fuel. If they had thought to undermine me professionally, they had made a tactical error. They had pointed a flashlight at a problem that deserved light. For years, I'd wanted a way to help students whose families had reallocated their futures. The kids told to be practical, the kids who paid for everyone else, the kids who woke up to find their jars emptied. My parents' voyeuristic visit to the dean crystallized that goal. I accelerated the launch of the first-gen and overlooked Scholars Fund. Not a private rant disguised as philanthropy, but a structured public instrument. Clear eligibility, transparent review, and legal counsel involved to prevent the exact kind of backdoor maneuvers my parents had tried. The priority clause read, bluntly, priority to applicants whose educational funds were misappropriated by family members or guardians. I fought for the clause like a gladiator. If you take a weapon to my door, I will build a courthouse. I wrote a speech. I cut anything that sounded like revenge and left the rest. Truth, fury refined into action. I wanted the story to serve others, not be a personal tirade. I wanted the microphone to be a lever that lifted more than my voice. That night, my mother texted me. We were only trying to help Tyler. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. Another, you're always so cruel. Another later, if you don't help him, we'll find other ways. I took a breath. I sent back a single image. A photograph of the maroon folder stamped with a UMass crest and a single printed word across the top. Policy. No more words. Paper is louder than threats. The evening of the fund launch, the auditorium hummed with humanity, students, donors, faculty, and a handful of alumni who remembered what it felt like to be first in their families to cross a stage. I had insisted the event be open. No VIP-only glass cages where the powerful pool their good feelings and walk home. The point was accessibility. They arrived late as if daring me to notice them. My mother in a beige cardigan, hands folded like a prayer. My father, jaw set, the posture of a man unused to asking. Tyler in a jacket that fit new and nervous. They stood in the middle rows, a small island against the tide of people whose lives were not made of headlines. When I stepped to the microphone, the plastic tasted like every time I'd swallowed when I could not afford to speak. My voice, steadier than I expected, filled the room. Good evening, I'm Nicole Reed. I paused long enough for the room to settle. When I was 18, someone decided my future was less important than someone else's convenience. They did not call it theft. They called it help. They called it family. That taught me a lesson. Language can hide violence. My mouth, calm on the outside, felt hot. The words landed like fistfuls of sand. This fund is for the students whose jars were emptied by the people who swore to protect them. It is for those told to be practical until practicality killed their dream. We will not make you justify your pain in public. We will take your story, verify the facts, and give you money and counsel without shame. In the crowd, faces shifted. I saw the slack-jawed relief on one young woman's face, the way someone finds a seat after running. I saw colleagues nod, not for me, but for the principal. I saw my parents' faces go through stages. Surprise, then an attempt at composure, then the slow red creeping of embarrassment. I did not name them. I did not need to. Those who had ears to hear had already heard. Those who had not would not be moved by my testimony anyway. When the applause rose, it felt like a tide that would not recede. Students came up with stories, quiet, jagged confessions of emptied accounts and bitter relatives. We opened the application right then and there for a pilot round. We put in place safeguards, third-party verification, the involvement of financial aid officers, and legal oversight. I made sure the process closed any loophole where a relative could wander in with a smile and a story. After the event, I received messages that unfolded like flowers. A note from a woman who had worked 3 jobs as a teen to fund her tuition and whose mother then borrowed the balance for a new van. A letter from a first-gen student who had been told to wait 1 year forever. An email from legal saying they'd sent my parents a formal notice to cease contacting the dean. The universe rings differently when you replace sham with structure. My parents did not approach me. They gathered at the edge of the lobby like shipwreck survivors scanning a shore they no longer recognized. I saw my mother's mouth form a wordless question, felt the phantom of the kitchen where I had once been swallowed. Their plan to tarnish me had become, in the most exquisite way, part of the proof that set my work in motion. Later, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail and listened to her breathe. The message was small, broken. Nicole. We didn't know how bad. We were trying. The tone begged for pardon. I listened not with the girl who had cried alone on the dorm floor, but with the woman who had learned how to bind wounds and to build bridges only when they are safe. I returned a short email, no pleading, no accusation, just 3 sentences. The fund is now active. If you wish to support it, the donation link is public. If you wish to discuss family matters, please use my personal email. This is the only channel I will accept. That was all. Closure is often a ledger entry, not a sonnet. People ask me later if it still felt like revenge. I tell them yes, but not the movie kind, with a glass smashed and a curtain set alight. My revenge was administrative, relentless, and public in the quietest possible way. I turned their attempt to soil me into a shield for others. I crushed their whisper with policy. I taught a university how to hear what too many families refuse to acknowledge. I gave students a reason to stop apologizing for being hurt. When the first scholarship round awarded 3 students, one came to my office and pressed a small folded note into my hand. Inside, a crumpled dollar and a sentence written in handwriting that trembled with the same hunger I remembered, for the jar I never got to finish. I set that note on my desk and, for the first time in a long time, felt the steady beat of something like peace. My parents? They refrained from further visits. Whether they were ashamed, defeated, or simply outmaneuvered, I do not know. Maybe they will return with new strategies. Maybe they will never understand the language of boundaries. Either way, my answer remains the same. The rulebook and the fund stand between us. If they come again, they will meet forms, signatures, and the quiet gaze of policy. They will no longer be able to take my future by stealing it. If you want to call that revenge, call it that. I call it protection of myself and of every student who deserves a chance without bargaining for it. My final line is not a threat. It is a promise. I will not be erased again. And if anyone tries to do it through the dean's door, they will find that the door now opens onto a lobby full of people who know how to read receipts. This was my last, loudest answer. Not a scream into the night, but a building where the lights are on for those who were told to stay in the dark.